Welcome to Radicards TV on Radicards.com. I'm your host Patrick, and today we're going to be interviewing a special guest, Ben Aguirre, and he is a former columnist for Beckett, is it?
Yeah, I did that for about 18 months.
Okay. And Ben, you're a general sports card collector, right?
Yeah, mainly baseball.
Mainly baseball. Ben, thanks for taking this opportunity to do this interview. Are you nervous or excited about this interview?
I guess a little of both. I haven't done Skype before. So the only time I've actually seen Skype is really on Catfish, and that never turns out well. So
All
I guess
right.
it's different.
I love it. Awesome. How did you hear about Radicards.com?
You and I actually met about 4 years ago. The National Sports Card Collection, uh, National Sports Collectors Convention out in Baltimore. We got to chat about some stuff.
Yeah, I remember that. I met you with Chris Olds actually at the same time.
Yep.
I think at the time you and he had been doing some collaborations together for Beckett magazine.
Yeah, I was out there writing some stuff for Beckett that year, and yeah, we were talking. I think it was Conseco stuff, right?
Uh huh.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I want to say I saw a video of you and he opening a box of '89 Upper Deck.
Oh yeah, no, that was a box I always wanted to open.
Yeah,
That was my first national I've been to, so I wanted to open a box. So he and I opened it together on video. Of course, he pulled the Griffey out of the box.
it's
So I
so
still have
cool.
not actually pulled the Griffey out of the bag.
It's so cool. I've seen in my life I've seen someone pull a Griffey in a pack, and I've also helped a buddy of mine open a box of that in 2010, and he didn't get a single star player
I have the entire box.
in the entire box.
That is weird.
That is just, and so it's kind of suspicious when that my from my experience when that went down, 2010. Um, but yeah, I do remember watching that video of you guys opening that, and I thought that was just so cool. So, so fun. So Ben, I always start the interview off asking people, at what age did you start collecting baseball cards, and what got you into it?
Yeah, I was 7. My family and I we just moved from San Francisco down into the suburbs, and it was something new. We actually had a card shop across the street, which is kind of crazy by today's standards, but
Mm.
we had a card shop across the street, and there's like a little there's a card shop, and then there was a pet store and a grocery store. So I ended up over there, and some of the neighbor kids, we all kind of ended up over there. So I just kind of fell into it. It was kind of just something to do when I was a kid, and I just kind of loved it from the start.
Now you started collecting in 1987, right?
Correct.
Yeah. I remember I started in '88, so I remember getting my first pack of tops, and getting a Ryan Sandberg was my first star card.
Yeah, 87 was the design for 87 was fun. The wood grain borders.
Oh yeah.
That's something that just kind of stuck with me. Actually, the first card I got, or the I don't know if it's the actual first card I got, but the one that sticks in my mind is the Sammy Khalifa card. He's kind of doing like a crow hop, taking a high chopper over second base. The card's pretty much worthless, but it's kind of priceless in my mind because it just encapsulates everything. When I was 7 years old, he's a mess. The field, there's a lot of dust going on. It's the Pirates uniforms from '87. It's classic.
Totally classic. Speaking of dust on those cards, I remember the Kevin Mitchell having a slide-in
Yes.
kind of arrangement with lots of dust. I always liked that card because of the action shot of that card. It reminisced to me of the 1971 Topps Thurman Munson of, the picture of the player sliding in and Thurman tagging. I just think that those are great cards that showcase that action sequence.
Yeah. Today's cards, everything's, and they're not really stage. Well, there are a lot of stage stuff, but everything's, the guy at bat. There's not a lot of action in any of the photos, which is kind of interesting because photography is a little easier these days with digital.
Yeah. A funny thing too about '87 Topps is that some guys collect the whole set signed, and there are certain
Yes.
players, and I think there's a coach or a manager in there. I think he's a manager. Um, Dick Hauser, I think, is a very, very tough card to get signed in
Really?
that set. Yeah, it would be my
Here's the last
understanding that
one.
his card came out like right before he died, and so
Oh.
he only signed a small. He was only able to sign a very smaller amount of them, and so they fetched like I think the last one I saw was like in the 300s somewhere.
Collectors will do what they do to complete their sets. That's
Right.
just funny.
No, I'm guilty of certain things in that capacity over the years.
Absolutely.
So what do you like about collecting baseball cards, Ben?
Um, it's a little old school. Hobbies have changed over the last 20, 30 years. I'm in my mid 30s, so I grew up during that era when cards were really kind of a thing. It was we're going to invest in, moms and grandmas and grandpas. They're buying all this stuff at the, Price Club, Costco, anywhere you can get, anything in bulk. They were sitting there waiting for these things to come out on pallets, and they're buying, boxes of 89 score and stuff like that. But for me, it's really kind of an old school. It's a way to connect to the history of the game. I don't do a lot of reading, which is interesting, but with cards, there's just a connection to it. I can feel, that card wasn't produced today, especially with the vintage stuff. It's like 50, 60, 70 years old. And there's just that connection to the old school, the way the game used to be. So that's just, it's hard to put into words.
It is hard. It is hard for me. It's like the nostalgia of being young.
Yeah.
It's always kept with me over the years, and when everything is really hard in life, you always have baseball cards.
It's true. That's definitely true. I look back, at my life, I'm only in my mid-30s, but there are definitely certain cards that, hit up. It's a timeline of my life. I kind of look at it, and, certain card, like 89 Griffey, I'll remember certain things about it, or the 89 Upper Deck McGuire, it's a common card, but I remember where I was when I pulled that card, and there are just certain things in life that are kind of connected to cards. It's a timeline thing.
Mm-hmm.
It really is.
I totally understand that, absolutely. So tell me, Ben, do you collect any specific player, team, or something else?
When we think of player collectors today, we think of the hardcore, like, super collectors, right? Like, everyone loves Mike Trout, Chris Bryant. These are the guys, like, today. All the young guys want these guys. This is who they chase, and they spend hundreds of dollars on these guys. My guy was Roger Clemens. And I say was because he doesn't play anymore. And obviously, lots of ups and downs with Clemens throughout his career, even as a collector of Clemens. So when I was younger, my friends and I, we all got together. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so everyone's a big, A's fan at the time. They all like McGuire, Canseco, all those guys. And I just took a liking to Roger Clemens. I like the way he pitched. He was a badass. But I also collect rookie cards, or vintage cards as close to their rookie card, I should say. So it's kind of a vague theme, but that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Well, could you think of one specific Clemens card that was maybe the hardest to track down of all your Clemens cards?
Actually, the first Clemens autograph was tough for me. 1995, Upper Deck had a mail-in thing, and basically you collected 36 wrappers and send in like $5 for shipping, and you basically get a jumbo card signed by Roger Clemens. Well, I was 15 at the time, and Upper Deck packs and they weren't 50 cents, they were like $1.25 a pack, right? And I'm working on like $3 allowance a week, so that's like 2 packs a week, right? So I finally get all that stuff together and send it in, and of course I'm sending in a plain white envelope because I'm 15, I have no idea. I send it, and it comes back 3 weeks later with a stamp on it, overdue, passed. I passed. They didn't have any more, so it took me another 10 years to track one down for my personal collection. It cost me about $40 to get one, but I remember getting that card and like, it's about damn time I got this card. It's not a hard card to get, but me being 15 when all that came out and the mail-in stuff, it was just impossible. I couldn't find it.
So we talked about this, I think, early in this interview. What was your first baseball card, like the one you can remember and you had mentioned? How many do you have now, would you say?
Total cards?
Yeah.
Well, I've purged quite a bit, actually. So 5,000 count boxes. There was a point in my life where I had about 25 of those just sitting around, and I was moving from one place to another, and I literally went through and pulled out a couple things and then took them all to Goodwill.
You did?
And I dropped them off because I couldn't store them anymore. I was in the process of moving. I was 2 years into college, so I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me right now. This is too much. I can't deal with it. So I donated it, and I remember taking it to the guy at Goodwill, and he's like, what am I going to do with this? I'm like, I don't know. You guys figure it out. Here you go.
You guys figure it out.
Sure. And they usually sell those things, $20, $30 a box, and just people will buy them. It doesn't always have to be worth a bunch of money, but people will buy it.
So tell me, how do you catalog your collection? Do you keep a checklist in Excel, a Google Sheet, or something else?
Ooh, this is like the organization question that really doesn't have one single answer. I've tried several different ways. In the late 90s, I started using the Beckett Organize thing on the website. I didn't have a computer at home. I literally would take a box of cards to the library and spend an hour just click, 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 that only lasted about a month, and I was done with it. It's too much. As far as organization, even now, I still don't have a certain way to do it. I'm more of a visual person, I think, when it comes to like checklists and stuff. So I like to take pictures of my cards. I use my blog, my website, as really kind of my way to chronicle what I actually have. If I question, do I have that card or not? First place I go is my website. I'll just search it. And it's just the easiest way for me to figure it out. So it's not like if I handed you a list, or if you asked me about a specific card, that'd be the way I'd figure it out, unless I knew off the top of my head. But I don't use Excel or Word or any of that stuff. It's time consuming, and I always want to change what I'm doing. The only thing that ever seems to work is photos.
Speaking of your websites, cardboardicons.com,
Yes.
link below, along with link to your Twitter account, Cardboard Icons. What are some of your favorite cards and why that you own?
In my collection?
Yeah.
It's really a rookie card thing for me. It really, especially with the vintage guys, I associate the player, their greatness, and their rookie card, or their early card. One of my new favorite cards, newer I guess I should say, is the, so it's the 1909-1911 Colgan's Chips Honus Wagner.
Oh, yes. You're the second person that has mentioned this card. They own this. This is just such a fascinating item.
It's kind of cool because, Honus Wagner is like the name of our hobby, right? And the T206 card is just, it's never going to happen for me. The card's like $500,000 at least, even if the card was washed 5 times recently.
Right.
It's still $500,000. So this card here, it's the same pose. The same exact one on the T206. And it's a way more affordable option than a $500,000 card. But I think that's kind of my new favorite card of the old school, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, yeah.
I have lots of others. So the first Baseball Hall of Fame class is something that's kind of interesting to me because it's Babe Ruth, Honus Wagner, Christy Mathewson, Walter Johnson, and Ty Cobb. And when I picked up the Wagner, that kind of completed my rookie card collection of all 5 of those guys. So there's the Wagner, there's a T206, Ty Cobb, you can see it. It's a 1, I don't care. The grade is really as important to me as it is that the card is authentic.
I love the redback T206 Cobb. That's such an iconic card.
It is. It's kind of obviously this one's been through hell and back, but now it belongs to me. So it's been in my collection for about 7-8 years now. There's Walter Johnson.
Oh, yeah. Did these come from the same seller?
No, these were collected over time. Different sellers. It just took a little while. So, no, these are definitely different people. This is a Christy Mathewson, actually, pretty nice condition. I just upgraded this one about a year and a half ago, I want to say.
Yeah, it's funny. That card has a lot of backstory to it, at least with me and my experiences of seeing this card. I remember Chris Olds writing a story about his copy of that card in Beckett.
Yeah.
It's such a great card. And there's another version of that with a white hat on.
Yeah, I think that's the one Chris actually owns.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, I don't know what draws into that one. I prefer the black one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's Baker, 33 Gowdy.
Oh, yeah, the Gowdy. That's a
It's
beautiful
got an
piece.
which is why it's a 1. But if you see it in person, it looks a lot better than a 1.
Pretty good centering. Not bad, right?
It's not bad at all. It's okay.
Speaking of the 90s card shows, I remember subscribing to Beckett magazine at the time. And every month I would look forward to getting that magazine because I knew in the show calendar I would go straight to my city and be like, oh, what's happening this coming month? And I would save for it because consistently month to month there would be something. But that was one of the peak reasons why I liked that magazine so much. And I would, other things about Beckett, I would memorize the prices. I would just stare at that magazine day in and day out for an entire month till the next one came out. I carry it with me everywhere in the house, it was just the greatest manual back in the 90s. I just loved Beckett magazine.
Well, that's what we have. I mean, now everyone's got a phone everywhere they go. So there's so many different places to get your information.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like you. We had in high school. We had I think 30 minutes to read every day, and we were like, yeah, we can care what you read. Great. Every day is Beckett. Same thing. Memorize prices, memorize players, memorize the cards they were showing. That's how things started to stick in my head. Reading the columns, looking at the dates for card shows, all that stuff. I just started memorizing stuff. It's a different time.
It's not a bad time. It's just a different time, right? It's just changed, and you have to kind of just go with the changes. So now instead of Beckett pricing, I might go eBay completed sold listings. I do miss going to Beckett and seeing all the up and down arrows month in and month after, from like 10 cents to 15 cents. I really miss that.
From 8 cents to 13 cents.
Yeah.
That's the early 80s for you, or late 80s.
I just loved that stuff so much. Up and down arrows were
It's all
great.
entertainment. I mean, we all know that the actual price of a card is what people are going to pay for it, or what they have paid for it. And the thing with us, when we grew up in those early 90s, mid 90s, when Beckett, the value listed in Beckett actually meant something, that's what we had. That was our resource. Everyone likes to complain about it now. It's like, oh, the price guide's pointless, this and that. Yeah, okay, fair enough. And to be fair, I'm not a Beckett employee, so.
I always thought that it was interesting that Tony Gwynn's stuff was always the cheapest player listed, and I was like, dude, he's like one of the greatest hitters of all time.
It's true.
I never understood that.
Really got no respect. There are certain guys you're like, really? And everyone's chasing David Justice. Hey, he was great. Mark Reyes, all right, cool. Yeah, you had legitimate stars who had absolutely no following, and it was clear. I mean, Tony Gwynn is a perfect example. I mean, there are guys who hardcore collect Tony Gwynn that have kind of brought that market around. But even then, you got to get the cards that are limited to 5 or 10 now. And they're all in on it. But if not, they've already got it. I mean, there's just so much of it out there.
Yeah, year in and year out. I had a conversation with a friend of mine that if you don't get this one of one, don't worry. In the next month, there will be 3 more.
Exactly. Or don't worry about the black press plate because the cyan one's out there.
Right.
So it's kind of ridiculous, but it's just the nature of our hobby right now.
The expensive pack. I heard what Topps Mint dropped, and it was like over $900 a pack.
Yep. Did you hear the one that they just released? I think they just released details about it the other day. The Topps Chrome Sapphire factory sets.
I haven't heard those.
Yeah, $1,500 for an entire set.
What's the significance?
Well, I guess with the Sapphire, and to be honest, I'm not fully read up on it, but I saw the $1,500 price tag and I said, no, not for me.
They're making it harder and harder every year for kids to enter the market. And what do kids have? They have opening day. And what's an opening day? Nothing. And so I feel like what's going to happen in 50 years when this market is gone on? What's going to happen with the next group of kids? Now, the assumption then becomes, will those kids get jobs to allow them to make enough money to get in the market at a higher cost?
Well, see, the discussion about we need more kids in our hobby is kind of an interesting one to me because I have 2 kids. My kids are 5 and 7. They go with me to the card shop. They see me buy stuff, and someone asked me, "Is this a hobby for your kids?" I said, "Nope. I can't, in all earnest, recommend this hobby to a kid. I can't. The money is just absolutely insane. Honestly, the kid spending $5 isn't going to save this hobby. That's why we have all this expensive stuff because we've created this culture where everyone wants the big card, right? And even with Topps Mint, right, which is like $900 a pack, which is insane for 5 cards. You have no idea what you're getting, right? Of course, everything's a hit, but even then, if you're pulling Mike Trout, you might have a $500-$600 card, unless it's super rare, right, or super special. But we've just created this culture of only the expensive stuff matters, So for the kids to get into it, they can still collect the base cards, and I think that's a fair way to start, and then figure out from there if that's what they want to get into. But I think the physical act of collecting baseball cards as a child, that's kind of old school. But I can't recommend to my son right now, hey, let's go to the store, I'm going to give you $100 so you can buy a pack.
As with many extensive categories, we often have to pick a focus and stick to it. Do you have a focus in your collecting strategy, and if so, what is it? So, for example, you talked about Roger Clemens and vintage rookie cards. Within those 2 categories, do you collect anything specifically? So, for example, with me, as a Frank Thomas collector, my focus is in like the 90s and early 2000s. That's generally where I go.
I think with Clemens, there's about a 10-year gap where he didn't have a lot of the modern stuff. within the last couple of years. I don't have a lot of that stuff, so I'm still trying to catch up on that. With the rookie cards, so a lot of the vintage stuff, I'm looking at Topps and Bowman, and that's kind of what was available. Um, Even 33 Gowdy, that's considered, it's been labeled the rookie card for a lot of cards. T206, I'll try to pick those up. But a lot of the modern stuff, I mean, Chrome is kind of the way to go in terms of like signed prospect rookie cards, or pre-rookie cards, whatever you want to call them. So I kind of think that's where I'm going these days, although that's getting kind of pricey too. So the signed card, the signed prospect cards are nice. Also, just the basic tops is nice to have, just as kind of a go-to. Correa, Bryant, Trout, any of those, Kershaw, tops update. Those are just standards. Good to have. I like to have those, and of course, signed cards if I can afford it.
A lot of collectors have cards they feel were perhaps the most difficult to track down in their collections. Amongst all the cards they have, I can mention a variety myself that were nightmares. It took me 10, 20 years to find certain cards. Can you talk about one or two cards you feel fall into this elusive category? And feel free to mention like search duration and any other details you feel necessary.
Yeah, so aside from the rookie cards and the Clemens stuff that I collect, I managed to finish the 2000 Clear Greats of the Game baseball autograph set, which was a tough set to finish. But the one card out of that set that was really difficult to find is the Mike Schmidt, and I finally found it. Of course, the 84 Fleer update, Clemens was always tough for me to get to because it was expensive for a long time, until he got popped for PEDs or HGH or whatever. Then the prices started to drop to a level I was comfortable with, so I managed to pick one of those up later.
Are there any specific cards you're still chasing?
Actively chasing, not really, and that's kind of where I guess I've lost my focus, which goes back to a question you asked me a few minutes ago. I'd like to say the 2001 Bowman Chrome Pujols is something I'm chasing, but it's not something I'm saving for, actively trying to find a decent copy.
The Chrome is to 500, and it was my understanding it was a wrapper redemption?
It was, I don't know if it was a wrapper redemption, I think it was a redemption card.
Yeah. Do you collect anyone else or anything else, and if so, why, what, and who?
I like Hall of Fame autographs, the game use stuff, which is just kind of passe these days, but I do enjoy that stuff, the Hall of Fame game use stuff.
If you weren't collecting what you collect, who or what would you be collecting and why?
I don't know. It's a good question because we kind of talked about this earlier about collecting kind of getting us through tough times or just kind of being a timeline in our lives, and especially like in the early teen years, when you change, your friends change. I had some friends who just kind of went down a weird path, and I just knew I didn't want to go that path, and so I kind of used cards to get my way out of it. I chose to spend my time in that instead of doing the bad thing. So if I didn't have cards or didn't collect, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing right now. I don't know if I definitely wouldn't be talking to you, I know that. But, I might not be where I'm at, in my career. I might not be where I am with my family. I just don't know. It kind of sounds cliche. Hey, cards saved my life, I can't say that, but it did provide an opportunity for me to kind of stay away from all the bad stuff. So.
That's a good point, and that's something I can share with you in the capacity that having a hobby just by itself allows us to keep our minds occupied on something, which means we're not thinking about something else, and that something else could be some sort of a negative or non-productive activity that could lead to other things that could be also negative and non-productive. And so hobbies, no matter what we collect as humans, I feel are very beneficial for a variety of reasons. One being they allow us to keep our minds occupied on something. And so, in a way, they do save our lives, right? Kind of something to think about.
That's pretty deep.
Deep?
That's pretty deep, man. I think you're right. I think that I saw a cartoon the other day that said the mind is the most difficult prison to escape. I mean, it's true. I mean, if you literally sit somewhere with nothing to do, you don't have a phone, you don't have a book, you don't have a hobby with you, what are you doing? You're thinking about what you're doing. Why are you thinking about what you're doing? It's this constant spiral of what am I doing? If you're occupying your time or at least your mind with something productive, I guess, it can be good for you.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, as card collectors, baseball cards in that way become an extension of who we are as people, because we think about them all the time. We build projects, we research, we organize, and organizing is a personality characteristic, something that we can do well, right? Where he's a good organizer, or we'll depend on him because he organizes the events really well. Well, where does he get that? Well, he grew up collecting baseball cards. Little did they know that you grew up collecting baseball cards, which makes you such a great organizer of something else.
I mean, it's not really about collecting the cards. It's really about organization and kind of having something to do. So sharing a hobby with someone doesn't have to be specifically that hobby, but the organization aspect is a huge thing. I mean, that's a translatable skill you can take into your adult life.
Absolutely.
You got to start somewhere. And a lot of times it starts with baseball cards.
Another thing too that I've noticed as well is the degree of attention to detail. I think that you pick up along the way from having a hobby that's so articulate like baseball cards, that's widely diverse and complex. I think over the course of time you start to pick up things that may be more subtle in your day-to-day life because of this attention to detail.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One of the side things I do with one of my coworkers, he collects full game used uniforms, and he likes to have things photo matched, right? And so I do a lot of that work for him for free. It's just kind of friend stuff. But I think you're right. The attention to detail is something I learned as a kid looking at my cards. So when he looks at a picture of player A and his jersey here, he doesn't see the correlation. But me, as a guy who's been looking at these details for years, because of my card collecting, I can see it really quickly, and he's just amazed by that. And not like it's anything special, but it's just something you learn having a hobby that requires you to pay attention to detail.
I think it's one of those skills that obviously is not strictly required, but it's highly encouraged to have, because it allows you to pick up fine details in your day-to-day life and whatever you're doing with projects for yourself or with others. It's a great personality characteristic to have. It's served me well. Do you have any future plans for your collection, and if so, what are they? So some people in this capacity, they mentioned something like, they want to showcase their collection by building a website, or they want to create a better system of organizing their collection. So can you think of something that you have in terms of a future plan? Do you have future plans for that?
Future plans, probably continue what I'm doing. I mean, like we mentioned earlier, I have my blog, my site, cardboardicons.com, and that's really something that I was more active probably about 5 or 6 years ago. I'm looking forward to getting back to doing more with that, chronicling what I have, why certain cards mean certain things to me, just kind of being my personal diary in a sense as to what these cards are, why I own them. As far as the future, I don't have a specific goal or intent. I do get asked occasionally, "Are you going to sell? When are you going to sell?" I don't have a plan for that. I don't go into this with the idea of yep, tomorrow I'm going to sell all of my stuff and then take my money and wonder what I'm going to do with it. It's not what it's about for me.
Go buy more baseball cards. I want to finish with one final question. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share?
I think it's very important that collectors need to take a step back and really buy what they enjoy, not what everyone else enjoys. Mm-hmm. If you're spending hundreds of dollars on a single pack and having negative feelings 95% of the time, you probably shouldn't be doing what you're doing. Just kind of self-reflect on, just reflect on yourself every now and then and figure out why are you doing it? Are you enjoying it? Mm-hmm. If you're not, take a break, change up. Don't be afraid to, change the focus of your PC, your personal collection, or even continuing this hobby. If it's not for you, then it's not for you. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to take a break, take a break. Don't get caught up in all the stuff that everyone chases. Because that's what's expected. Collect what you want. Collect what makes you happy.
Excellent. Good point, Ben. Good end point there. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. Really appreciate that. And for viewers, you can catch Ben on Twitter at Cardboard Icons and look him up on his website, cardboardicons.com. Again, links below. Thank you for watching another episode of Radicards TV on radicards.com. And until next time, enjoy collecting.